The humiliation began in a conference room that smelled of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. It was a small, airless box at the downtown branch of Sterling Mutual Bank. My son, Michael, sat to my right, his posture stiff, his jaw clenched. My daughter, Sarah, was on my left, nervously twisting the strap of her purse. Across the polished glass table sat a young woman named Jessica, a senior financial advisor whose nameplate seemed too grand for her 20-something face. My hands, spotted with age and marked by a lifetime of carpentry, rested on my knees. I could feel the tremor in my fingers, a new and unwelcome companion these last few years. I had come here for a simple reason: to apply for a home equity line of credit. I wanted to replace the roof on the house Martha and I had built, the house where we'd raised these two children sitting beside me now. A leaky roof felt like a personal failure, a betrayal of her memory. "So, Mr. Peterson," Jessica began, her eyes flicking from me to Michael, then back again. "You're looking to borrow against your property. The house is fully paid off, which is wonderful." I nodded, my throat dry. "Yes, just need to fix a few things. The roof, mostly. Winter's coming." Michael cleared his throat, a sharp, commanding sound that cut through the sterile quiet. "Jessica, what we're actually here to discuss," he said, leaning forward, placing his smooth, uncalloused hands on the table, "is a more comprehensive financial solution for my father." I stiffened. My shoulders, already heavy with the weight of my 78 years, felt a new load settle upon them. "Michael, what are you talking about? I just need a loan for the roof." He didn't look at me. He kept his gaze fixed on the advisor. "My father has had some memory lapses recently, forgetting to pay bills, a small kitchen fire last month. We feel as a family that it's time for me to take a more active role, power of attorney perhaps, to protect his assets." The words hit me like a physical blow. A kitchen fire. I'd burnt a piece of toast. The smoke alarm had shrieked for 30 seconds, and a forgotten bill. It was the cable bill, a company I'd been meaning to cancel for months. My mind raced, trying to find the ground beneath my feet, but it was shifting, turning to sand. I looked at Sarah, my little girl, my hope for an ally. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She just stared at the intricate pattern of her purse strap, her thumb rubbing it back and forth and back. Jessica's professional smile faltered. It was replaced by a look of careful, practiced pity, the kind of look you give a stray dog or a confused old man. That look, more than Michael's words, burned itself into my memory. It told me I was no longer seen as a man, but as a problem to be managed. "Dad, stop," Sarah whispered, finally looking at me. Her eyes were pleading. "We're just trying to help." I gripped the arms of the chair, the cheap fabric rough under my palms. My voice came out as a ragged whisper. "Help? You call this help? Humiliating me in front of a stranger?" "Sir," Jessica said softly, her voice an unwelcome intrusion. "Perhaps we can schedule another time to discuss this, after you've had a chance to talk as a family." The meeting was over. Michael had won. He patted my shoulder on the way out, a gesture of hollow victory. "It's for the best, Dad. You'll see." That night, the house felt cavernous. Every creak of the floorboards echoed Martha's absence. I couldn't rest. The shame from the bank clung to me like a shroud. Desperate for some connection to her, to a time when I felt respected and whole, I went up to the attic. The air was thick with the scent of cedar and thyme. I found her old chest, the one where she kept her most precious things. Inside, beneath a stack of old quilts, was her gardening diary. I took it downstairs, my hands trembling as I opened the worn leather cover. I expected to find notes on her beloved roses, sketches of the vegetable patch, but on the very first page, in her elegant, familiar script, was a message not meant for a gardener. It was dated just 6 months before she passed away. It was just 5 words. I read it once, twice, my heart pounding against my ribs. It felt like Martha was speaking to me from beyond the grave, a final, urgent warning. Don't trust your children. and as I stared at the ink on the page, the front door rattled. A key was turning in the lock, a key only Michael and Sarah had. The door creaked open, and Michael stepped into the foyer, his silhouette framed by the pale glow of the porch light. He wasn't alone. My daughter-in-law Jessica, not the banker, but my son's wife, was with him. She carried a large empty cardboard box. "Dad, you're still up?" Michael asked, his voice laced with a false, airy concern. He flipped the light switch, and the sudden brightness made me squint. My hand instinctively closed the diary. "I live here, Michael." "I'm usually up," I said, my voice flat. I set the diary down on the end table beside me, face down. Jessica offered a thin smile. "We didn't mean to disturb you, Arthur. We just thought, while we were in the neighborhood, we could start packing up some of Mom's things from the attic to, make it less overwhelming for you." Overwhelming. Another word in their new vocabulary for incompetent. The smell of Michael's expensive aftershave mixed with the lingering scent of my burnt coffee from that morning, creating a cloying, unpleasant aroma. My house, my space, was being invaded by foreign smells and false intentions. "The attic is fine," I said, my jaw tight. "I'll get to it when I'm ready." "But Dad, it's a fire hazard," Michael pressed, taking a step into the living room. He ran a hand over the back of Martha's favorite armchair, his touch proprietary, as if he were already assessing the furniture for an estate sale. "All that old paper and fabric. We're just trying to be proactive." My gaze fell on the cardboard box in Jessica's hands. It was large and sturdy, the kind you'd get from a storage facility. Proactive, a word that sounded responsible but felt like a euphemism for erasure. They wanted to pack up Martha, to box up her memory and put it away so they could deal with the house. Her house, our house. I thought of the diary, of Martha's stark warning, "Don't trust your children." The words were a drumbeat in my head. Why would she write that? Martha had adored her children. She'd sacrificed for them, celebrated them, worried about them. What had she seen that I had missed? "There's nothing in the attic you need to worry about," I repeated, my voice firmer this time. I stood up, feeling the ache in my lower back, but I forced myself to stand tall. I needed them to see I wasn't a fragile old man to be managed. "I appreciate the offer, but no." Michael's face hardened. The mask of the concerned son slipped, revealing a flash of irritation. "Dad, we're not asking for your permission. We're doing this for your safety." He exchanged a look with his wife, a silent, lightning-fast communication that excluded me entirely. Jessica set the box down with a thud. "Michael, maybe we should come back tomorrow." She shot me a look that was meant to be conciliatory, but felt patronizing. "Arthur, you look tired. Why don't you get some sleep?" They were treating me like a toddler being put down for a nap. A hot wave of anger rose in my chest, so fierce it almost choked me. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them to get out of my home, to throw their empty box onto the lawn. But I remembered the look on the banker's face. Any outburst would be used as evidence against me. He's emotional. He's unstable. So I clamped my mouth shut, took a slow breath, and gave a stiff nod. "You're right. It's late." They saw my acquiescence as a victory. Michael's shoulders relaxed. "Good. We'll come by Saturday morning. We can all go through the attic together." It was an order disguised as a suggestion. As they left, a cold dread settled over me. They were coming back, and they wanted what was in the attic. My mind raced. What was up there? Old photos, holiday decorations, my army uniform, Martha's wedding dress, and her old writing desk. The desk was a heavy oak piece she'd inherited from her own father. She kept all her important papers in it. Deeds, insurance policies, our wills. A sudden, chilling thought struck me. Michael's talk of protecting my assets wasn't just about my bank account. It was about this house, the most valuable asset of all. After the sound of their car faded, I locked the door and went back to Martha's diary. I flipped through the pages, my heart pounding. Most of it was about her garden, just as I'd expected. But tucked into a pocket in the back cover was a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a letter. It was a receipt, a carbon copy, dated 2 months before she died. From a law firm I didn't recognize, Henderson and Associates. The service listed was simple: last will and testament, revision and notarization. My blood ran cold. Martha had revised her will, without telling me. We had written our wills together, mirror images of each other, leaving everything to one another and then to be split evenly between the children. Why would she change it? And why would she keep it a secret? I looked at the bottom of the receipt. It was for a specific secondary service. A chill traced its way down my spine. The charge was for the long-term storage of a single sealed document in the firm's vault. By Saturday morning, a plan had begun to form in my mind, a fragile scaffold of defiance against the storm I knew was coming. I was up before the sun, the house quiet except for the hum of the old refrigerator. I sat at the kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee, staring at the receipt from Henderson and Associates. Martha, my practical, methodical Martha. She never did anything without a reason. A secret will, a document in a vault. It was a trail of breadcrumbs, and I had to follow it. The first step was to find out what, exactly, was in her old oak desk in the attic. At precisely 9:01 a.m., Michael's SUV pulled into the driveway. This time, Sarah and her husband, David, were with them. A full family meeting. A united front. David was a big man who always seemed to take up too much space in a room, his handshakes too firm, his laughter too loud. He was carrying another 2 empty boxes. "Morning, Dad," Sarah said, kissing me on the cheek. Her perfume was sweet and overwhelming. "Ready to tackle the attic?" "Ready as I'll ever be," I mumbled, forcing a weak smile. I felt like a general surveying an invading army. The 4 of them tramped up the narrow attic stairs, their voices echoing in the dusty space. I followed slowly, my hand gripping the rail, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm. The attic was hot and still, filled with the ghosts of 50 years of life. "Okay, let's be methodical," Michael announced, rubbing his hands together. "Jessica, you and Sarah start with the clothes. David, you can help me with these trunks." They moved with an unnerving efficiency, opening boxes, sorting through memories as if they were inventory. I watched them, a silent observer in my own home. My eyes were fixed on the far corner, where Martha's oak desk sat under a dusty sheet. It was locked, as always. Martha was the only one with the key, or so I thought. "Where did Mom keep the key for this old thing?" Michael asked, running his hand over the desk. "She kept it on her key ring," I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. I knew exactly where she kept it, in a small, carved wooden box on her bedside table. I had moved that box to my own drawer the day after the bank meeting. David grunted. "Probably better to just force it. It's an old lock." He nudged the desk with his foot. "Don't you dare!" I snapped, the words sharper than I intended. All 4 of them turned to look at me. The silence was thick with tension. "Dad, relax," Sarah said, her voice strained. "We just want to sort through the papers, make sure all the important documents are in one place. The deed, your insurance." The deed. There it was, the real reason they were here. "I know where the important documents are," I said, keeping my voice level. "They're in our safety deposit box at the bank, where they've always been." This seemed to satisfy them for the moment. They left the desk alone, but their plunder continued. An hour later, they had filled 5 boxes with Martha's things, her clothes, her books, her photo albums. Each item they packed away felt like a piece of me being removed. When they finally left, promising to return the next day to finish the job, the attic felt violated, hollowed out. I waited until I was sure they were gone before I went to my room. I retrieved the small wooden box from my sock drawer and took out the small ornate brass key. My hands trembled as I climbed the attic stairs again. I pulled the sheet off the desk, the dust motes dancing in the single shaft of light from the small window. I inserted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. I lifted the heavy oak lid. The scent of old paper and Martha's lavender sachets filled the air. Everything looked neat, organized in her perfect hand. There were files for household expenses, car titles, appliance warranties, and in the center a large manila envelope labeled House Documents. I opened it. Inside were the original blueprints, the survey from 1972, property tax records going back decades. But one document was conspicuously absent, the most important one, the original deed to the property. My mind reeled. I was certain it was here. We had celebrated paying off the mortgage by placing the deed in this very envelope, right here in this desk. Martha and I had shared a glass of cheap champagne, our hands clasped over the document that represented our life's work. It was gone. Then, my eyes caught something else. Tucked into a side pocket of the desk, I found a small spiral notebook I'd never seen before. It wasn't a diary. It was a ledger. On the first page, in Martha's handwriting, was the title, Loans to Michael and Sarah. I started reading. The first entry was from 10 years ago. $5,000 to Michael for down payment on car. Promised to repay in 1 year. Page after page, a meticulous record of money borrowed and never returned. Down payments, credit card debts, a lavish wedding for Sarah that David's family had supposedly paid for. The total at the bottom of the final page made me gasp. It was a staggering sum, nearly half the current value of this house. They had been draining us for years, all while smiling at our dinner table, accepting our generosity as their due. Martha's warning wasn't just a feeling she had, it was based on this secret ledger of financial betrayal. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Sarah. Dad, we've scheduled a meeting for you with our lawyer on Tuesday. It's important you're there. He's going to help us sort everything out. They weren't just sorting papers. They were building a legal case against me. And I realized with a sickening lurch, they must have taken the deed. The lawyer's office was the opposite of the bank. Where the bank was cheap and sterile, this place was designed to intimidate. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books that looked like they'd never been opened, and a thick, silent carpet that swallowed the sound of my footsteps. The air smelled of wood polish and money. My children were already there, seated in plush leather chairs across a vast mahogany desk. They looked comfortable, at home. I felt like a defendant walking into a courtroom. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Davies with silver hair and a watch worth more than my car, stood up and offered a hand. His grip was firm and cool. Mr. Peterson, thank you for coming. I'm James Davies. I represent your children. He didn't say he was our family lawyer. He said he represented them. The battle lines were clearly drawn. I sat down, my back straight, my hands clasped in my lap. I refused to let them see me tremble. What is this about? I asked, my voice steady. Michael leaned forward, adopting the same tone he'd used at the bank. Calm, reasonable, and utterly condescending. Dad, this is an intervention. We love you, but we can't stand by and watch you neglect your own well-being. The house is falling into disrepair. You're isolated. We've found a wonderful assisted living community for you, not too far from us. And the house? I asked, my eyes fixed on his. We'll sell it, of course. David, my son-in-law, chimed in from the corner where he'd been lurking. The proceeds will pay for your new place and ensure you're comfortable for the rest of your life. The rest of my life. It sounded like a prison sentence. They had it all planned out. My home, my future, all neatly arranged without my consent. The ledger flashed in my mind, the tens of thousands of dollars they had taken with no intention of paying it back. This wasn't about my well-being. It was a corporate takeover of my life. They wanted to liquidate the final asset. I'm not selling my house, I said, and I'm not moving into a home. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. It was an old tactic, one she'd used since she was a little girl to get her way. Daddy, please. Don't be difficult. We're doing this because Mom would have wanted you to be safe. The mention of Martha was a knife in my gut. You have no idea what your mother would have wanted, I said, my voice dangerously low. Mr. Davies cleared his throat, shuffling some papers on his desk. Arthur, he said, dropping the formal Mr. Peterson. Your children have expressed serious concerns about your cognitive state. They've documented several instances of memory loss and confusion. Given the circumstances, they are petitioning the court for conservatorship. Conservatorship. The word hung in the air, cold and heavy as a tombstone. They wanted to have me declared legally incompetent, to strip me of my rights, my autonomy, my dignity, to turn me from a father into a dependent. The full scope of their betrayal was finally clear. The bank meeting, the forced attic clean-out, the missing deed. It was all a coordinated effort to build this case. They had been documenting my every minor slip-up, twisting my grief and old age into a weapon against me. I see, I said, a strange calm settling over me. The shock had burned away, leaving behind a core of cold, hard resolve. Davies slid a document across the desk. However, we can avoid a messy and public court hearing. If you voluntarily sign over power of attorney to Michael and agree to the sale of the house, we can handle this privately, as a family. I looked at the paper. The black ink on the crisp white page seemed to mock me. I saw my signature line waiting at the bottom. I looked up at my children. Michael's face was a mask of implacable resolve. Sarah was openly weeping now, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. David watched me with a predator's patience. They thought they had me cornered. The grieving, confused old man, overwhelmed by legal jargon and emotional pressure. They expected me to break. I pushed the document back across the desk. No. Michael's jaw tightened. Dad, don't make this harder than it needs to be. The only thing hard here, I said, my voice ringing with a strength I hadn't felt in years, is looking at the two of you and trying to see the children I raised. I stood up. The meeting was over. As I walked to the door, Mr. Davies's voice followed me. Arthur, you'll be served with the official court papers within the week. I advise you to retain counsel. I paused with my hand on the heavy brass doorknob. I didn't turn around. I just stood there for a moment, the weight of their collective betrayal pressing down on me. Then I remembered the receipt in my wallet. Henderson and Associates. A new plan was forming, not of defense, but of attack. As I stepped out into the hallway, my phone buzzed again. It was another text from Sarah, no doubt a follow-up to her performance inside. I glanced at the screen, but it wasn't from Sarah. It was a picture message from an unknown number. My heart stopped. It was a photo of the original deed to my house. Beneath it, a simple line of text. Your son left this at the copy shop. I think you might need it. The copy shop was a small, cluttered place tucked between a laundromat and a pizza parlor. An elderly woman with a kind, wrinkled face stood behind the counter. She saw me come in, and her eyes widened in recognition. You must be Mr. Peterson, she said, her voice a gentle whisper. I'm Lisa. I was a friend of your wife's, from her book club. She reached under the counter and pulled out a large envelope. My hand shook as I took it from her. Inside was the deed, the original notarized document, safe and sound. Your son was in here yesterday, Lisa explained, her expression full of concern. He wanted copies of this, said it was for insurance purposes. But he seemed so agitated. He left the original in the machine. When I saw what it was and I remembered Martha talking about how much she worried, I felt I had to do something. I found your number in her old club directory. Martha. Even now she was looking out for me, her network of quiet, loyal friends. Thank you, Lisa, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what this means. Holding the deed felt like holding a shield. It was proof of my ownership, my history. But it wasn't a weapon. Not yet. For that, I needed to see Mr. Henderson. His office was in an older, more modest building on the other side of town. The waiting room had comfortable, slightly worn chairs and the scent of old books. Mr. Henderson himself was a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same oak as his desk, sturdy, principled, and timeless. He was in his late 70s, like me, with eyes that held a lifetime of wisdom. "Arthur Peterson," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was warm and firm. "I've been expecting your call for some time. Martha told me this day might come." He ushered me into his office and I told him everything. The bank meeting, the attic, the lawyer's office, the threat of conservatorship. I showed him the ledger of loans I'd found in Martha's desk. He listened patiently, nodding, his expression growing more grave with each detail. When I was finished, he steepled his fingers and looked at me over his glasses. "Martha was a sharp woman, Arthur. Sharper than any of us knew. She saw the way the wind was blowing with your children. She saw their sense of entitlement turning into something much uglier." He stood and walked over to a large black safe in the corner of his office. He spun the dial with a practiced ease and opened the heavy door. From inside, he withdrew a thick, cream-colored envelope sealed with wax. "This," he said, placing it on the desk between us, "is the document she left in our vault. It is her true last will and testament, notarized the same day as the receipt you found. And this," he added, pulling a smaller, thinner envelope from the safe, "is a letter she wrote to you. She instructed me to give it to you only when you came to me for this exact reason." My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached for the smaller envelope, my name written on the front in her beautiful script. My fingers fumbled with the seal. Inside was a single sheet of her favorite stationery. "My dearest Arthur, if you are reading this, it means my worst fears have come to pass. I am so sorry you have to face this alone. For years I watched Michael and Sarah. I saw their greed, and it broke my heart. They see us not as parents, but as a bank, and our home not as a home, but as an inheritance. They will try to take it from you. They will try to make you seem small and helpless, but you are not helpless, my love. You are the strongest man I have ever known. Inside the other envelope is my will. It will protect you. It will protect our legacy. It is not what our children expect. It is what they have earned. Know that I loved them. But my first duty was, and always will be, to protect you. Fight for yourself. Fight for our home. All my love, forever." Martha, tears burned my eyes as I read her words. It was her voice, her strength pouring into me. She hadn't abandoned me. She had armed me. I looked at Mr. Henderson, my resolve hardening like steel. "What's in the will?" He gave me a small, grim smile. "Poetic justice, Arthur. It's a masterclass in it. She created a trust. The Martha Peterson Trust. Upon her death, ownership of the house and a significant portion of your liquid assets were transferred directly into it. You, Arthur, are the sole lifetime beneficiary. You control everything. You can live in the house, sell it, rent it out, and use all the funds for your care and enjoyment for as long as you live." I felt a dizzying wave of relief. "So, the house is not mine to be taken. Legally," Henderson confirmed, "it is not part of your personal estate. It belongs to the trust, a trust your children cannot touch and a conservatorship cannot control." "And after I'm gone?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "That," Mr. Henderson said, a glint in his eye, "is the brilliant part. The trust document stipulates that upon your passing, the remaining assets, including the house, will be distributed to Michael and Sarah. However, there is a clause, a very specific one." He leaned forward, tapping a manicured finger on the thick envelope. "Distribution of their inheritance is contingent upon a review by the trustee, that's me, to ensure that they have provided you with unwavering love, support, and respect in your final years." I stared at him, the full weight of Martha's foresight crashing down on me. "Their own actions," I breathed. "The petition for conservatorship, the lawyer, are a documented, legally binding record of their failure to meet the terms of the trust." Mr. Henderson finished, his smile now wide and genuine. "They have, in effect, disinherited themselves." He picked up his phone. Now let's call Mr. Davies, shall we? I believe it's time to schedule one more family meeting. We met on my turf, my house, my living room. I insisted on it. I wanted them to be surrounded by the very thing they were trying to steal, to have the portraits of their grandparents looking down on them from the mantelpiece. Michael, Sarah, and David arrived with their lawyer, Mr. Davies. They walked in with an air of strained confidence, like a team that knew they had the winning hand, but were trying to appear magnanimous. They saw Mr. Henderson sitting in Martha's armchair, and their expressions faltered. "What is this?" Michael demanded, gesturing towards my lawyer. "Dad, you didn't need to do this." "Oh, I think I did," I said calmly, taking my seat on the sofa. I felt a profound sense of peace. The tremor in my hands was gone. "Please sit down. We have a few things to discuss." They sat stiffly on the edge of the opposite sofa, a row of hostile strangers in the room where we had celebrated Christmases and birthdays. Mr. Henderson began. "Mr. Davies, my name is Robert Henderson. I was Martha Peterson's personal attorney. I believe your clients have initiated a petition for conservatorship over my client, Mr. Arthur Peterson." Davies nodded, a smug look on his face. "We have, on the grounds of his diminished capacity and for the protection of his assets." "I see," Henderson said, his voice smooth as silk. "And which primary asset are we most concerned with protecting?" "The family home, of course," David interjected impatiently. "It's his largest asset." "Excellent," Henderson said, opening his briefcase. He pulled out 2 documents. The first was the original deed to the house. He placed it on the coffee table. "My client recently recovered this. I trust you recognize it." Michael and David exchanged a flicker of a glance. Davies's professional calm wavered for a fraction of a second. "And this," Henderson continued, placing the thick, wax-sealed envelope beside it, "is the last will and testament of Martha Peterson, executed and filed 2 months before her passing." Sarah gasped. "Mom's will? But her will leaves everything to Dad, and then to us. We've seen it." "You've seen her old will," Henderson corrected gently. "This is her final one. As the executor and trustee of her estate, I am now obligated to read the relevant portions. With your father's permission, of course." I nodded. "Please proceed." The room was utterly silent as Henderson broke the seal. He put on his reading glasses and began to read in a clear, resonant voice. He started with the standard legal language, but then he came to the formation of the trust. "I hereby bequeath my 50% ownership of the property at 45 Oak Street, along with the specified liquid assets, into a living trust, to be known as the Martha Peterson Trust." As he read, I watched my children's faces. Their initial confidence melted into confusion, then dawning horror. Michael's face grew pale. Sarah began twisting her hands in her lap. Davies was scribbling furious notes on a legal pad, his brow furrowed. Henderson detailed my position as the sole lifetime beneficiary, with complete control over all trust assets. He spelled out, in Martha's own carefully chosen words, that the trust was designed to provide for my complete comfort, security, and independence, free from any familial pressure or financial coercion. The words hung in the air, a direct indictment of their actions. Then Henderson arrived at the final clause, the one concerning their inheritance. "Upon the death of my husband, Arthur Peterson, any and all remaining assets within the trust shall be distributed in equal shares to my son, Michael Peterson, and my daughter, Sarah Peterson Jones, provided, and this is a binding condition, that they have acted in a manner befitting a loving and respectful child. The trustee is granted sole authority to determine if this condition has been met. Should the trustee find that they have acted in a coercive, disrespectful, or predatory manner towards their father, their share of the inheritance shall be forfeited and donated in its entirety to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital." Silence. A deep, profound silence filled the room, broken only by a strangled sob from Sarah. Michael stared at Henderson, his mouth slightly agape. This is ridiculous. You can't be serious." We can contest this. Mr. Davies put a hand on his client's arm. The language is ironclad, Michael. Your mother had every right to structure her trust this way. His voice was flat, defeated. He knew they had lost. Henderson closed the folder. The petition for conservatorship, he said, looking directly at Davies, which is a matter of public record, will serve as Exhibit A in my determination as trustee. I think it's fair to say it constitutes a rather compelling piece of evidence. Michael finally turned to me, his eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and disbelief. You knew, he hissed. You knew all along. You set us up. I met his gaze without flinching. For the first time, I didn't see my son. I saw a stranger who had tried to steal my life from me. No, Michael, I said, my voice heavy with a sorrow that surprised me. You set yourselves up. Your mother just made sure she was there to catch you when you fell. I stood up. The meeting concluded. Mr. Henderson will show you out. I turned and walked towards the kitchen, leaving them to sit in the ruins of their own greed. As I left the room, I heard Sarah's voice, thin and pleading, cut through the silence. Daddy, wait. But I didn't stop. I kept walking, away from their mess, towards the first breath of clean, free air I had taken in months. I had one more thing to do, one final decision to make. The silence they left behind was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. The heavy, oppressive atmosphere of conflict had lifted, replaced by the quiet hum of the old house. I stood in the kitchen, looking out the window at Martha's rose bushes, their last few blooms clinging stubbornly to the branches despite the autumn chill. She had been right. She had protected me. A few days later, a crisp letter arrived from Mr. Davies, formally withdrawing the conservatorship petition. It was a sterile, legal document, but to me it was a declaration of independence. There were no apologies from the children, just a few short, stilted text messages from Sarah, asking if we could talk. I told her I wasn't ready. I didn't need to talk. For the first time in a long time, I needed to act for myself. I called a realtor, a woman Martha had played bridge with, someone I could trust. I told her I wanted to sell the house. When she asked why, I told her the truth. It's full of too many ghosts, I said. Some of them are even still living. 2 weeks later, the for sale sign went up on the lawn. It felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. The house sold quickly, for more than any of us had expected. As beneficiary of the trust, the proceeds were mine to manage, under Mr. Henderson's watchful eye. I used a portion of the money to buy a brand new, comfortable RV. It was something Martha and I had always talked about doing, selling the house and just driving, seeing the national parks, visiting the coast, following the sun. We'd always said, someday. Now my someday had arrived. The day before I left, I asked Michael and Sarah to meet me at a diner. They came, looking wary and defeated. They sat across from me in the vinyl booth, the air thick with unspoken things. I'm leaving tomorrow, I said simply, stirring my coffee. I've sold the house. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Michael just stared at the table. This isn't about revenge, I told them, and I meant it. The anger had burned away, leaving only a deep, abiding sadness. This is about my life, the one I have left. You tried to put me in a box, literally and figuratively. I've decided to live on the open road instead. I slid 2 envelopes across the table. Your mother's will was about consequences, not punishment. This is from me. They opened them. Inside each was a check. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to cover the loans they had taken from us over the years, according to Martha's ledger. It was their debt, returned to them. This isn't an inheritance, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. It's a clean slate. Your debt to your mother and me is paid. What you do from here, how you live your lives, is up to you. Whether you can find a way to earn back my trust, well, that's also up to you. But it won't be bought. I stood up, leaving them with the checks and their thoughts. I didn't need to hear their response. My justice wasn't in their defeat, but in my own liberation. Today, I'm telling you this story from a campsite in Arizona. The sky is a brilliant, endless blue, and the air is crisp and clean. The RV is parked with a perfect view of the sunset. I have Martha's diary on the table next to me, and her picture is taped to the dashboard. I learned a hard lesson, that sometimes the people you love can lose their way, blinded by what they think they are owed. Martha's true gift wasn't the trust or the house. It was the clarity. She gave me the chance to see the truth and the strength to act on it. Poetic justice, I've found, isn't about seeing others get what they deserve. It's about finally giving yourself what you deserve: peace, dignity, and a horizon with a road leading straight into it. And for the first time in a long, long time, I feel free.